All right, welcome to the Daily Tech Show. It is Chris. You might know me from Dailytekk, the original channel, Dailytekk 1, I guess we're calling it. This show is kind of new, and I've just been publishing this segment. So I guess this is officially sort of like the first full featured, full form, whole thing, I guess you could say. Today's video is brought to you by Brain.fm, science-backed focus music that sounds great, by the way. You can check it out, linked up down below. I don't really know what to call this. In some ways, it's kind of like the old Dailytekk podcast, but not really, because it's not just audio. And anyways, we talk about all kinds of stuff, tech news, what's kind of new and happening in the tech culture, and that could sort of have to do with the past, present, or future. We're kind of doing a mix of stuff, seeing what people like the best. So you got to give me some feedback. Let me know what you like, what you want to see, what you actually are like, Chris, we don't need to see any more of that. Give me all that feedback. That said, there's always going to be some sort of exclusive feature, some part of the actual experience here that you're not going to pick up on any of the clips that we're just going to talk about, just kind of hang out. You know, I'm not going to lie, part of this show is inspired by what used to be called the Lou Later podcast. And I kind of like that. It was Lou from Unbox Therapy, and he just kind of hung out with his crew of people and talked about stuff. And it was mostly tech focused, but it was just like a relaxing thing to kind of have on. Like, it felt like you were sort of shooting the breeze with this group of other tech enthusiasts, and that's gone now. I don't know where it went. And granted, it's just me here, but I feel like the crew that we can shoot the breeze with is like me and you. And so, I don't know, I'm excited to bring this format back. I really should do kind of a whole video on what this is, this setup here. There's so much Apple tech in this room. There's two iPhones in front of me here. I've got them rigged out with some special lenses. I've got like an overhead station over here for when I'm shooting top-down shots, because obviously I shoot some daily tech videos down here too, not just this kind of clippy, podcasty stuff. I've got an iPad Pro here, which is kind of running those two cameras so I can see the angles, kind of control everything. I've got several lights. You see a couple of them behind me. Those are more like practical. I've got some more just around here to color things. I've got some professional lights here to light up the face and if I need a hair light or something. So yeah, I mean, like, I should do sort of a behind the scenes. Let me know if you're interested in that, because I've got things really seamlessly working together. And I guess I should mention, you know, here's an iPad Air. We got the iPad Mini here to sort of like keep me informed. And so I feel like it's a really good setup. It's clean, it's easy to use. When I started the channel back in the day, it was like, I really wanted to focus on getting the best cameras. You know, like, people were shooting on really expensive $20,000, $40,000 cameras. And it was like, man, how am I going to compete with that as I was getting started? And then later I did start to get some pretty nice camera equipment. And you know, the lenses were nice and stuff. You got that depth of field, but it's like, I had this notion I should switch to the iPhone at some point, because it's not like, oh, it's good enough now. It's like, it was a convenience thing. It's easy. And it's like shooting video with all of the Apple gear has been like a dream, actually, honestly. And you know, I'm a little bit disappointed with some of the stuff Apple's been doing lately. I feel like in many ways Apple's less exciting than it was when I kind of got into this, when I started it like almost 10 years ago or whatever it's been. I feel like, you know, Vision Pro is interesting, but it's not like a mainstream thing yet, but it's a long-term product. And I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of interesting. But I just want to take a brief second and let you know about our sponsor today, Brain.fm. I love Brain.fm. I'm literally never without this app on my Mac, on my iPhone, wherever I go, because it just sounds so good. But it's not just about the sound. Brain.fm is science-based, science-backed, and it will help you actually concentrate better. So it actually works as fast as just 5 minutes. And I love the interface, and it just really has quite an effect. Check it out. As you can see, people really love it. And if you check the link down in the description, you get 30 days free. Like the iPhone, the iPad, and we're gonna talk about this in one of the segments today, they're just sort of less interesting than they were. And Apple as a company is just kind of less interesting. It's like, I don't really care about all the services and like TV shows and stuff. I never thought that was gonna be Apple as like a content provider and content producer. And so that's where we're at. Whatever, that's fine. Not my favorite thing. So this show, it sort of gives me like an opportunity to talk about other stuff. We're still gonna hit the Apple stuff. I think that's what the core of the audience like really wants to get into and stuff, but we're gonna just talk about other stuff. We're gonna hang out, talk about the future, you know, what's going on right now, what's exciting outside of Apple and with Apple, and where it intersects with Apple. So that's kind of what we're shooting for, I guess, in a rough nutshell. Did you know that due to sluggish iPad Pro sales, LG Display is now focusing on iPhone screens? There's more to this story than just, hey, the panel maker for the iPad Pro is going to switch things up and focus more on the iPhone. What's behind that is some sort of like big shift in either what consumers are wanting to buy or pay for, or what they can afford, or just how exciting people feel iPads are in general right now. Because actually, it sounds like there's been pretty slow demand for the iPad Pro, which is weird. I've been doing this channel for so long. Well, Dailytekk, this is the second channel now if you're watching a clip of this. Man, it's like when the iPad Pro originally came out, there was so much demand and interest. And then Apple came on and like added a keyboard, and they added in Apple Pencil and stuff. And just people couldn't get enough. The iPad was so interesting to people and everyone wanted one. And it's just like I can see it. I'm always measuring stuff like this based on the stats in the back of the channel. So like people just aren't as interested in iPads these days, whether it's the Pro or like the base entry level or whatever. Like it doesn't really matter. Like the iPad as it is seems like the interest is really waning, and you're seeing that reflected in this report here. So Mac Rumors is reporting this. So the OLED screen is obviously really nice. That's what people love about the iPad Pro. Those inky blacks really makes everything around it pop when you can turn off those pixels and it's like truly black. So really, like, this is as premium as an iPad can be or feel at the moment in its current shape, like the form factor. And I mean, what else are you gonna do at this point? I heard some people talking about the other day, they're like, what does the iPad Pro really do that a cheaper iPad doesn't? I mean, things are nicer to a degree, right? If you're watching a movie or something on there, it's nicer. But is this the best way to watch a movie anymore? I mean, the Vision Pro, it's too expensive for your average everyday person. That's gonna change. In the future, if you can watch it and it feels like you're in a theater, like, is that the best? Is it the best for gaming? I mean, the iPad has a stronghold in that it's where you do like handwritten stuff, where you use the Apple Pencil and it's portable. That's its thing. Like some people are like, Apple's just making a business move here and you're really like reading way too much into this. But I feel like other people, as I'm reading the room, the sentiment, I've really done some research on this, seeing what people are talking about. And I think a lot of people are a little bit concerned about what this means for the iPad Pro. Things are so good. It's like your phone now. You don't have to upgrade every year, every time, or 2 years if they wait forever, or even more in the case of the iPad mini. Things are very iterative now rather than game changing, usually when it comes to iPhone, Apple Watch, the core Apple products. And the iPad Pro is no different, really. So like, what really are you gonna do at this point to make it crazier and drive that demand? Most people though are reading this news as the iPad Pro just isn't selling well. So that means people don't really care about the thinness? Does that mean people don't really care about the display or, the new chip inside? They don't even know what they can do with it. Apple's like marketing Apple Intelligence. What does that mean for people? They haven't seen the benefits yet. From LG's side of this, like the reason they're switching their focus and they're going to be focusing more on the iPhone side of things is because obviously there's more demand there. So like from the LG perspective, they got to go where they can make the bucks, right? So that kind of tells you a little bit of something, or does it? I mean, some people are like, no, this just tells you a little bit about market dynamics. LG, either Apple is making a smart business move or LG is making a smart business move. It doesn't really have a reflection or anything to do with the iPad Pro itself, because maybe Apple's going to come out with something else to surprise you, and this is all part of that shift. What's weird though is this might open up some space to accelerate OLED screen adoption in other products, actually. That's kind of a weird way to look at this, isn't it? The OLED equipment is the OLED equipment to some extent, and if you can put that pipeline to use elsewhere, that makes sense if you're LG, and maybe even if you're Apple. The crazy stat on this one though is that LG Display aims to supply 70 million iPhone OLED panels in 2024. That's up from 51.8 in 2023. So you can see where the demand is growing, and you can get a feel for where the demand is slowing. What's your take on this though? I mean, what does it mean for Apple? What does it mean for the iPad? If you're an iPad Pro user, do you care at all? I mean, are you pretty happy with the iPad as it is? And a lot of people are out there just being like, they're harping on software. The iPad needs better software. It needs to be unleashed. It needs the pro software because the hardware side of things is all cinched up. There's not really anything else to do on the hardware side. So bring on the software revolution for the iPad Pro. So I don't know, let me know where you fall on that and what you think this means. Did you know Apple's latest move could reshape the tech industry's manufacturing landscape? Well, that's because Apple Watch chips are now being made in the US, and this is the first time ever. Geopolitics, shifting economic winds, these are the things swirling around in the background as we have this discussion. It's kind of weird to think about. I mean, for all these years, iPhones have been made overseas, oftentimes in China. Apple's diversified. They got a lot of stuff going on in Vietnam now. Maybe some of it's shifted even to India. They are trying to shift some of their production over here to the US. And you can see that reflected here. It's part of a trend, though, where companies are trying to bring back high-tech manufacturing to the States, American companies. And so, politically, I don't know where you're at, how you feel about it, if you care, if it doesn't matter to you at all. A lot of people end up being really super cautious about this because they start to worry about, oh, is it going to make us have to pay more? Are costs going to go up? Does this decrease our foreign dependency and that would be good? Or does it increase what we're going to have to spend? Can you even decouple from another country successfully? But I think, though, if you're American, then, which most of my audience is, it breaks down that the majority of people watching this are American. Although I got people watching from everywhere. So, hey, from to everybody around the world. But here's the thing. I think if you're an American, you're mostly optimistic about this. It doesn't matter. It's not like a political thing. Like, you can be proud of your country and what you can do here. I mean, Apple's not dumb, right? There's shifting political winds, and Apple certainly wants to reduce its reliance a little bit on other foreign countries for the production in case something goes down, obviously. I mean, if you're China, it's probably a good idea to do something similar. If you're India, it's probably something that you'd like to look into as well for your country, because it makes sense to have tech independence, especially in this realm where it's easy to slip things into a supply chain. Let's just put it like that. And if the more dependent you are, then, I mean, that's the opposite. If you're dependent, that's the opposite of being independent. So just by nature, it's better for you as a country, probably in the ways that matter the most, if you can have things within your geopolitical borders. And we can even just hit pause and be like, well, is that really just Chris's opinion or whatever? And everyone does have different opinions on this, but just look at what companies are doing. I mean, Apple is not necessarily, or actually not by a long shot, like a right-leaning company. So yeah, we have a new president, coming into office, and that does, like I said, shift the winds a little bit. But that said, I mean, Apple is Apple, and this is Apple making this decision. Apple is pulling the trigger here to do this. And so I think that speaks volumes all on its own. Obviously, I think that when Apple takes an action like this, it kind of acts like a cascade, right? It's a domino that gets knocked over. So yeah, is this going to influence other tech giants to consider similar shifts? I would guess yeah. It's funny because you look on the back of a lot of your Apple stuff and it will say designed in Cupertino, but that's just the design, right? It doesn't mean that it was built in the USA. So is it USA made? It's USA imagined to a large extent, but even that doesn't mean exactly what it did based on, just changing workforce dynamics over the years either. So this is actually a really complicated and nuanced discussion here, which is why I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on this, however, wherever your thoughts fall. Here's this person worrying about hopefully the price doesn't spike, and we got somebody else saying, America. So those are kind of the two views there, right? I think for everyone who's saying it's definitely going to be more expensive now, I really don't think so. Apple being Apple, they don't really want to raise the price on stuff. So they're not going to do this if it means that they're going to have to tank their prices. You can already look at the previous story that we were talking about with the iPad Pro and how, maybe Apple doesn't want to lose any more sales. And if sales are eroding in other areas, they don't want to do something to further erode that, right? So Apple is not forced to do this. Apple chose to do it, and it seems like there's a reason. And I don't think they're doing this knowing that, hey, it's going to spike the price by X amount. So yeah, this is the first time that this is happening for the Apple Watch here in the US. But the Apple Watch now joins the party for US-based chip production because it was iPhone processors already. So now it's also the Apple Watch SIPs as well. What's it mean for you? What's it mean for global tech dynamics? Hit me with the comments. If you're thinking about getting a new car anytime soon, you've probably been wondering, will it have the next generation of Apple CarPlay, CarPlay 2? And the answer lies in the boardrooms of car companies. CarPlay, the original, the first version, it was plug and play, and it was cool. People liked it. They wouldn't buy a car that didn't have it. And it was way back in like 2022 when Apple announced CarPlay 2. They showed it off, I think, at WWDC, and it wowed people. People were like, whoa, that's legitimately one of the coolest announcements at the event that year. And then here we are a couple years later, after Apple had promised all these different brands were going to be on board, like Land Rover, Benz, Lincoln, Audi, Volvo, Honda, Porsche. And the CarPlay 2 news has sort of dropped off the face of the earth, which is too bad because all the images, the demos were like, it takes over all the screens in your vehicle, not just, one little screen in the center dash of the console there. It was like an immersive Apple-inspired experience, but it's been hitting some road bumps, so to speak. And I think the main reason why is because car manufacturers don't want to give up control of such an important component of the vehicle to an outside company. And so this is good and bad, I think, for consumers. Bad if you're an Apple fan and you wanted that. And I think Apple even, to some extent, made the calculation that, hey, if we're not going to do an actual Apple car, Project Titan died, however many times it died, and here we are with no Apple car. If we're not going to have that, we might as well at least kind of like have a pseudo Apple experience in the cars where we kind of take over the interior to some extent, the tech aspect, and kind of deliver some happiness to people that way. And I gotta say, I'm looking at it right now, that preview image, and you got the widgets up there, you got some calendar information on top of kind of that old normal bit of screen that you saw. Got Apple Maps integrated. But I think because manufacturers are starting to put the brakes on, I'm actually fitting in a lot of unintended puns here, aren't I? I think there's a lot of skepticism at this point of like how much of this is actually going to roll out and become something that people see out in the wild and can actually use and enjoy. Now, on the flip side, there's a couple companies that have signaled that they're going to head down the Apple CarPlay 2 route. One of them is Porsche. If you are interested in that, you're in the luxury market, then maybe that sounds really cool to you. Another one I believe is Aston Martin. But again, these aren't like your average everyday cars, so we're not talking about mass market adoption here. It's very niche. And in that case, it's almost like, well, it's not even worth the effort. And by the way, Porsche is owned by Audi and VW Group. I have not enjoyed the entertainment systems, even of their higher end stuff. It's been kind of glitchy and slow and whatever. So I actually think CarPlay taking things over for that group of cars would be a big upgrade, to be honest. But if you're Apple and you only have like a couple car companies on board and it's more on the niche side of things, then I don't know, is it really even worth it, to salvage the CarPlay 2 operation? And some manufacturers just coming out and they're like, we are not going to adopt this. Mercedes is one company that came out and they just said, no, we're not doing CarPlay 2. And so if you're a Benz fan and an Apple fan, then what's the deal there? What's going to happen? Let's be honest, they're not going to outdo Apple when it comes to software and stuff, right? Probably, for the most part. I mean, I know Tesla people are super excited about Teslas. And I know for a long time people were like, hey, I wish that I could get CarPlay in Tesla. But a lot of people have moved on past that and they're like, I don't want it. I don't need it. Real happy with how things are in the Tesla right now without Apple. But the original CarPlay experience is starting to look a little bit long in the tooth. People keep their cars for a long time and you get used to it. But by the time you get a new car, if it's just the same old experience, you're going to be a little bit disappointed, I think. That said, people have speculated, and I'm kind of gauging the conversation online about this, that maybe if there's enough consumer demand, it could push manufacturers to still deploy it and get active with CarPlay 2. I don't really know though, because I'm sitting there and if I was the car manufacturer, maybe offering options is a good thing. But also, it's pretty strategically dumb to seed those screens and that experience, I think, outside the company. You do a lot better to just hire a crack team of engineers and designers and stuff to come in and do things in-house. Doesn't always work out. I know Jaguar is doing their own thing right now that a lot of people are like, what? And some people are too afraid to just be like, I don't like that. And they sort of just be like, what's Jaguar doing? Have you seen what Jaguar is doing? I don't really like the direction that I'm seeing the design go with Jaguar. Change for the sake of change isn't necessarily a good thing, but here we are in 2025 and Apple's CarPlay website says first models arrive 2024 and it's kind of landing with a thud. By the way, overlooked by a lot of people, it's not just Benz that's saying no. I mean, GM, they're opting out of CarPlay as well. And so, I mean, as an Apple fan, I feel like as somebody who's got an iPhone in the pocket, let's just put it like that, I would rule GM out then because I don't want whatever GM is going to put in there instead of Apple's experience. So I think that a lot of car manufacturers messed up in the first place by already incorporating things like Android Auto and CarPlay in there. So now that people have had a taste of it, it's going to be like, you don't want to turn that off when they've come to expect it. But what's your take on this? Are you feeling like you would not buy another car if it didn't have this CarPlay 2 in it? or at least CarPlay at all? Or do you not really care? Does it not matter? Are you gonna grab a Porsche so you're like set to go no matter what? Let me know down in the comments. And also let me know if, as you're looking out into the future, you feel like it even matters all that much if we start to have more autonomous self-driving vehicles, and maybe you're not even that occupied with the stuff that's on the dashboard. Maybe we're gonna start having it where like the seats are more like swiveled in and you're just kind of on your devices or whatever anyways, because you don't really have to pay attention to the road and stuff. Maybe it's like you just need the screen in your pocket, or bring your iPad or something along and you don't even need the screens, to have the Apple experience. I don't know. This kind of gets crazy. So let me know what you think. So let me just cap this off with some inside baseball here for everybody who is listening that's an actual Daily Tech fan. Maybe you've been a fan of the brand for a while, you subscribed, or you caught my old podcast or whatever, however you ended up here. If you know anything about Daily Tech, I'll just explain how things are going with this new channel. We've rebranded it a couple times. It wasn't always just Daily Tech 2. It was a clips channel before. That's why we have so many subscribers. But it's weird. We're getting more subscribers at a faster pace on this second channel than we are over on the first channel. So that explains why we're paying some attention to this. Now, the first channel is not abandoned, not by a long shot. We've got sponsors over there who are excited to have their content show up. And I'm excited too, because aside from keeping Daily Tech in business, I feel like it's a win-win when we can introduce people to brands that line up with the things that they're trying to do. So, but I feel like the shift this year in 2025 over on the main channel is going to be like, it's going to get a little bit more creative. We're slowing down a little bit. We're hitting the gas over here, producing more of these fun clips where it's just kind of this hangout vibe, which I do actually kind of like. It's nice to just kind of shoot the breeze. And whether you're really into all the topics or not, you just want like something to put on in the background while you're working. I think it works in both situations. But the main channel, I think we're going to slow down a little bit, and it's going to let me be a little more creative, put a little bit more thought time and effort into the actual concepts of the video. Everything from just the title and like how do we deliver on whatever it is that we're promising here without disappointing people, to the actual content, to the actual, you could call it cinematography. I don't like to think of it in those terms, but illustrating whatever that we're talking about on the channel. I think the last video, it was sort of a proof of concept. You can go back and check that out over there. It was a very different video, and people were saying this is the best video you've ever made over on Daily Tech. So I think that's good. We'll see what it does views wise. And as you guys know, I got a lot of side projects going. I'm in startup land. I've got the courses that I'm working on too. So, and by the way, I'm about to finish the AI course, and it's so huge. You ever start something and you're like, if once you're into it, I never would have started this if I had known. I still would have started this one because number one, it's just that important of a topic. And number two, I'm interested in it and really want to learn, not just learn everything about it, but share everything about it that I feel like is important. And we're talking about stuff that people aren't going to hear about from other sources. Because the whole thing with this course is it's not just how do you use AI or how does AI work, like every course that I've ever seen on AI is. It's the big picture. It's like, what does AI mean for me? And how do I relate to AI and robots? And what's my place in the future going to look like? What are the disruptions coming down the road? How do I avoid them? What are the new opportunities? What are the waves that I can jump on and surf? And it's a very comprehensive overview that's going to be very evergreen in the future and come with a bunch of updates. But it came at a huge cost in terms of my time. And I spent a lot of time over the Christmas break working on it and stuff. So that's why I'm so excited to get it in your hands, because it's super valuable. But I got a lot of irons in the fire, which means that I'm actually kind of enjoying this format here. So I hope you guys like it. Give me some feedback. Let me know, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.